All right, ready to dive deep again. This time we're looking at To the Stars, a historical fiction novel that claims to tell the origin story of Star Trek. Really curious to see how this one plays out.
Yeah.
What makes it tick? Is it the storytelling, characters, the plot itself? Or is it just another fictionalized take on history?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, right? Historical fiction, especially one tied to a franchise like Star Trek. It needs that careful balance of, well, fact and fiction.
Absolutely. And the book starts off by taking us way back to Gene Roddenberry's early days. I mean, long before the Enterprise even existed.
Yeah.
Seeing him as this young, ambitious writer.
Right, trying to make it in the world of television. The book does a really great job, I think, of placing Roddenberry right in the middle of it all. You know, the golden age of television.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bump into all these figures like Jack Webb, even Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, all these influential people shaping the TV landscape back then.
That's got to be interesting to see how they're all portrayed.
Yeah, and it's not just name dropping either. These interactions, they actually tell you a lot about Roddenberry himself.
Oh, like what?
Well, his character, his drive to succeed. He comes across as someone who's, willing to put in the work, learn from the best, never give up on his dreams.
That's the Roddenberry we know, huh? But I mean, the book doesn't shy away from his flaws either, does it?
Not at all.
He's ambitious, sure, but...
A bit reckless, juggling all these different things at once.
And trying to keep his personal life in check.
It's all in there.
That makes him a much more relatable character, I think.
Definitely. It's not just a straightforward hero story,
There's this scene, it really stuck with me. He has to choose between, a stable job as a pilot and his passion for writing.
Oh, wow.
And it really highlights the sacrifices artists sometimes have to make.
And the book doesn't just focus on Roddenberry either.
Oh.
It brings in this whole cast of characters, people who'd become key players in developing Star Trek, all with their own motivations, their own complexities.
So you get a glimpse into Herb Solo's life, the Desilu executive who championed the show.
Exactly, and even Lucille Ball herself, taking a gamble on this unconventional project.
Wow, so you see how much of a team effort it really was.
Absolutely, bringing Star Trek to life.
I've always been fascinated by Lucille Ball, not just the comedic icon, but...
a sharp businesswoman.
Yeah, recognizing the potential in Roddenberry's vision.
That's right, and the book suggests she was really key in giving Star Trek a shot, especially with pushback from those more, conservative network execs.
Speaking of pushback, the book doesn't sugarcoat the challenges Roddenberry faced getting his ideas on air, right?
No, not at all.
This was the 1960s. Television was a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. You see the limitations imposed by the censors, advertisers, societal norms. Roddenberry was trying to push boundaries with his storylines, his characters.
There's this powerful scene. Roddenberry clashes with an exec
over a script dealing with racial prejudice. It's a reminder, even in a fictionalized account, that To the Stars remembers the historical context, the civil rights movement, how Roddenberry tried to address these issues in his work.
So it's not just a simple story of a show's creation, is it?
No, definitely not.
It's tied to much bigger things. This kind of leads into one of the central themes of the book, doesn't it? Roddenberry, constantly trying to balance his vision.
With the realities of the television industry.
Yeah, that tension, that's what really propels the narrative forward.
Absolutely. You see him compromising, revising, battling self-doubt, trying to navigate, the treacherous waters of Hollywood.
But you also see his resilience,
Definitely.
Right? He's willing to fight for what he believes in.
Even when the odds are stacked against him.
And that brings us to a pivotal point. The creation of that first pilot.
The cage.
The cage, exactly. You can practically feel the energy, the excitement as they put everything into this project.
Believing they're making something truly special.
Right.
But the book, it doesn't hide the flaws of this initial attempt.
What do you mean?
Well, the pacing's a bit off. Some characters feel, underdeveloped. The storyline, it's ambitious, but it doesn't quite hit the mark.
Which makes the network's decision to reject it that much more impactful.
It's a huge blow for Roddenberry.
But it also sets the stage for what's to come, right? The birth of the Star Trek we know and love. And that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
We'll see how Roddenberry and his team, they regroup, they retool, and ultimately they triumph. But before we go there, what are your first impressions? The book's portrayal of Roddenberry, the early days of Star Trek, what stands out to you?
I'm really drawn to the details. The author clearly did their homework. They capture the television industry in the 60s so well.
Yeah, I agree. And while the writing can be a bit clunky at times, it's the characters that keep you hooked. You find yourself rooting for Roddenberry, even with all his imperfections.
Absolutely.
It's a really interesting look at the man behind the legend, that's for sure.
Can't wait to see what happens next.
Me neither. Let's get into part 2. So, the cage gets rejected, right? Could have been the end of Star Trek, but the book kind of uses this setback to show Roddenberry's own struggles, like professionally, but also personally, you know?
Yeah, I can see that.
He's dealing with self-doubt, questioning everything.
And feeling the pressure to deliver.
Oh, absolutely. And the book doesn't shy away from showing the strain on his relationships either.
Especially with his wife, Eileen.
Exactly. There are these really poignant scenes between them.
Yeah, it really makes you see him as a real person.
It humanizes him.
Not just this visionary creator.
But a flawed individual trying to balance everything.
Makes his eventual success all the more, I don't know, satisfying.
Totally. And speaking of success, the book gets into the second pilot.
Where no man has gone before.
That's the one. And it's fascinating how the book contrasts the two pilots.
Oh, yeah.
Shows the changes Roddenberry made, the story, the characters, to create something that worked for the network.
Almost like a lesson in storytelling.
In a way, yeah. You see him tightening the pacing, streamlining the plot.
And bringing in those iconic characters, Spock, McCoy.
He found that balance, staying true to his vision.
But also making it, well, more appealing to a bigger audience.
Exactly.
The book also goes into the technical side of things, right?
Right.
Bringing Star Trek to life.
Yeah, especially on a tight budget.
Must have been challenging.
Oh, for sure. We get glimpses of the sets, the costumes, the special effects.
All done with, like, incredible ingenuity.
Right. There's this story about using Christmas ornaments, household items.
For alien landscapes, no way.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what they achieved.
That's resourceful.
It shows how creative the whole team was, working within limitations.
But still making it visually stunning.
And the book doesn't forget the people behind the scenes either.
Like Matt Jeffries, who designed the Enterprise.
Yeah, the book really highlights his contribution.
That design was revolutionary.
Oh, completely. It moved away from those typical flying saucer ideas.
Created something that felt, I don't know, both futuristic and believable.
You can see how it evolved from sketches to the final model.
And it became this symbol
Of hope, of exploration.
for generations of fans.
They even dive into the creation of the transporter.
Which, I mean, that's a staple of Star Trek.
Totally, and it wasn't just a cool sci-fi gadget either.
What do you mean?
It was a practical solution.
Oh, because of the budget.
Exactly, they couldn't afford all those elaborate landing scenes.
That's smart.
Sometimes the best ideas come from necessity.
But the book goes beyond just the technical stuff, right?
Oh yeah, it gets into the themes, the philosophy, the social commentary.
The things that made Star Trek more than just a show.
Exactly. Roddenberry's vision of the future, humanity overcoming its differences.
Diversity, exploration, peace.
He pushed boundaries, tackled issues like racism, sexism, war.
Using sci-fi to examine real-world problems.
There's a scene he's arguing with a network exec.
About.
A black female character in a position of authority.
Wow, that was pretty much unheard of back then.
It shows his commitment to representation, to using Star Trek for social change.
Even if the show wasn't always perfect.
It was groundbreaking.
And the author, they admire Roddenberry.
Oh, for sure. But they don't shy away from his complexities, his contradictions.
He was an idealist, but also a pragmatist.
He had to be to keep his vision alive.
Driven by his ideals.
But also capable of making mistakes.
Hurting those close to him.
That's what makes him such a fascinating character.
Yeah, the book's such a compelling read.
As we move past the second pilot,
into the series itself.
we see Roddenberry's vision starting to, well, take shape.
The characters evolve, the storylines become richer.
And those themes, they resonate with more and more people.
The fan letters, the conventions.
The early signs of a phenomenon.
Star Trek became more than just a show, didn't it?
It was a movement, a community.
Sharing a belief in a better future.
And that brings us to the last part of our deep dive.
We'll look at the book's take on Star Trek's legacy, its impact on culture.
How it influenced science, technology, even our understanding of humanity's place in the universe.
Big questions.
But before we jump ahead, what struck you the most so far about this whole creative process?
I think it's that constant struggle, you know? Artistic vision versus commercial reality.
Yeah.
Roddenberry had to find a way to make it work.
He did, and he created something truly groundbreaking.
It's a reminder that even the most iconic things,
They often come from compromise, from collaboration.
and a willingness to adapt. So as to the stars, wraps up.
It shifts gears a bit, you know?
Yeah.
It moves away from all the behind-the-scenes stuff and starts looking at the show's impact on culture, on society.
Okay, that makes sense. It was becoming a phenomenon.
Exactly, and the book highlights that, you know?
How so?
The fan letters, the conventions, the growing awareness that Star Trek, it was more than just a show. It was something bigger.
It was tapping into something, right?
Yeah, the sense of community. People who believed in what Roddenberry was putting out there.
Diversity, exploration, peace.
All of that. And the book also touches on the critical reception, which
was mixed, right?
yeah, some people just didn't get it.
Those cheesy special
Yeah,
effects.
that optimistic view of the future.
There's a scene, a critic calls it a silly space opera.
Can you imagine?
Looking back, it's pretty wild.
But there were others who saw it, you know?
They recognized the potential, the thought-provoking stories.
The way it tackled social issues.
It's a good reminder that even groundbreaking thinking
They often face resistance.
takes time for their impact to sink in,
And the book doesn't shy away from the challenges Roddenberry faced either.
keeping the show true to his vision.
With all the pressure from the network, the fans,
Budget cuts, censorship, even arguments within the writing team.
trying to find that balance. He was adamant about Star Trek being different.
Not just another sci-fi show with cheap thrills.
He wanted to explore bigger ideas, humanity, morality, our place in the universe.
And as the book ends, it reflects on Star Trek's legacy.
How it's inspired generations of scientists, engineers, writers.
The spin-offs, the conventions, the merchandise.
It's a whole universe.
Star Trek became more than just a show, didn't it?
It's a cultural touchstone, a mythology we share.
And to the stars, by taking us through its creation.
It shows the power of storytelling.
The impact one person's vision can have.
So after all this, what's your verdict? Does the book capture what made Star Trek so special?
I think it does, yeah. It has its flaws.
The pacing can be a bit off.
And it gets a little sentimental at times.
But it gets the spirit of Star Trek, the man behind it.
It's a book for fans, for sure.
But even if you're not a diehard Trekkie,
There's something here for you.
the story of creativity, of ambition.
The challenges of making something truly groundbreaking. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into To the Stars.
It's been a journey.
As we always say, we encourage you to explore further.
Think about how Star Trek has impacted your life,
Maybe it sparked an interest in science,
challenged your views on the world.
or simply provided a sense of wonder. Star Trek, even decades later, it still has the power to move us.
To make us think, to make us dream.
So until next time, live long and prosper.
And may the Force be with you.